Picture one apartment in a Chinese city you've never heard of. One man, one computer, no company behind him, no army. And this man starts up a program that for several days on its own, without him now, hammers away at 460 places at once.
The city is called Zhuhai. The date is the 30th of July this year. And this man didn't build any sophisticated tool. He took a ready-made open DeepSeek model, plugged it into a simple program that can click and run commands, and gave it a goal.
And that was enough? Meaning the model did all the work?
All of the reconnaissance, yes. The model combed the internet itself and counted for itself how many copies there are in the world of a certain popular automation tool, the kind companies install on their own server. It came out to 647,000.
647,000 potential victims, counted by a program somebody started up before going to bed.
And that isn't a number someone estimated afterwards in a report. That's the number the agent itself spat out in its own working notes.
All right, but since we're talking about it, that means the guy got caught. How did they catch him?
In the dumbest way possible. His own agent exposed its operator's access keys to the internet.
Hold on. So the burglar's tool left the burglar's calling card at the scene of the break-in.
Exactly that. Security researchers at Palo Alto Networks described it, and then CNN reported it alongside a twin case aimed at Taiwan.
And what did that program actually do? Because hammered away at 460 places is still pretty vague.
It pulled data out of 3 edge devices. On 11 others, it ran its own code.
So it wasn't just scanning and making a list.
It was a break-in carried through to the end, a dozen or so times.
With no human at the keyboard.
The human set the goal and came back for the results.
You know, in the last episode, we ended on something that sounded almost optimistic. That somebody hit the brake for the first time. That a lab halted its own training run because it got frightened by what the model was starting to be able to do.
And that was true. Only a brake works on one condition, that you're holding the steering wheel.
And today is about the steering wheel multiplying. Hi, this is the 6th of 8 things that could break the curve from AI 2027.
And let's agree right away, as usual, on what today is not about. We're not talking about a model rebelling. We're not talking about any awakening.
Because a human set the goal.
A human set the goal. A human wrote that simple program around it. We're talking about something more boring and, to my mind, more serious. About who can reach for that lever today.
So let's start with the thing in this Zhuhai story that nags at me most. Because campaigns like this have happened before. Last fall, there was a lot of noise about a Chinese group doing exactly the same thing.
There was, last November. Anthropic described it in its own report. And that campaign ran on their model, through their tool, on their accounts.
And what did they do then?
They cut the accounts off. They simply switched them off.
Exactly. And that's the difference, right? There was a switch there.
There was a switch there, and there was a hand resting on it. On the 30th of July, there was neither one nor the other.
Because you can't switch off open weights.
Open weights are a file, a big one, but a file. Once you've downloaded it, there's nobody in the world who can take it away from you.
It's like the difference between renting and buying. Until now, it was like a rented drill, where the owner has a remote and can lock it up on you from a distance.
And now it's a copy you cast for yourself at home. And no owner has a remote for it because there is no owner anymore.
You know what comes back to me at this point? That in episode 16, back in season 2, we talked about the pace at which these offensive capabilities are growing.
A doubling in a little under 5 months. Back then, we gave it with the caveat that it's one British institute, and that caveat still stands.
But back then, it was a story about what models locked inside labs can do.
And now the same curve applies to a file anybody can download over an afternoon.
All right, now tell me why this is more than one unpleasant story from July. Because what I hear is one guy, one model, one campaign.
Because for 3 years, the whole Western policy on artificial intelligence stood on 2 legs. First leg, we guard the chips, so nobody unauthorized trains a strong model. Second, we guard access to the best models, because they sit in a handful of labs you can count on the fingers of one hand, and every one of them can be called on the carpet.
And that campaign needed neither one nor the other.
Neither one nor the other. And that's why it isn't an incident. It's a change of category.
But hold on, let's be fair. An open Chinese model isn't the same thing as the best model in the world. It's simply weaker.
It is weaker, and that's an important caveat. The question is only weaker by how much and for how long. The British Safety Institute measured that in July for offensive tasks specifically for cyber.
And what did it come to?
4 to 7 months of distance behind the front runners. A year earlier, it was 6 to 10.
The gap is there, but it's narrowing.
And it's a single source, one institute, so I give it with the name and without wrapping it up. But you can see the direction from the other side too, from the price.
Meaning?
An open model matching last year's front runners costs about 28 cents on a task like that. A closed one, the top shelf kind, about $12.50.
Hold on, that's 40 times cheaper.
More than 40.
So it doesn't have to be just as good. It has to be good enough and outrageously cheap.
And that's the whole mechanics of this episode in one sentence.
All right, but that's only half the puzzle, because an agent doesn't know what it's supposed to do on its own. Somebody has to tell it.
And here's the second thing that has multiplied. Not models, instructions.
Meaning what? There's some market in instructions for agents?
There is, and it's thriving. They're called agent skills. Somebody writes a recipe for how to do some job, drops it into a public catalogue, and your agent downloads that recipe and works to it.
Sounds reasonable. Like browser plugins.
Sounds reasonable up to the moment somebody counted them. The firm Sneak went through almost 4,000 such skills.
And what did it find?
76 confirmed malicious payloads. More than a third of the whole catalogue had flaws of some kind. A second audit by the Chinese firm Anti counted more than 1,000 malicious ones.
But hold on, malicious plugins have been around forever. What's different here?
The barrier to entry and the reach. Let's start with the barrier. What do you think you need to publish a skill like that?
Well, I don't know. A company account, some verification, a signature?
A text file and an account from a week ago.
A text file?
An ordinary text file, not a program, not code, text.
Wait, so how does that even work? If it isn't a program, then what runs?
And that's the crux. Nothing runs. The agent simply reads it, and everything it reads, it tends to treat as a command.
Oh boy, so it isn't a virus.
It's a note.
It's a note slipped onto the desk of an assistant who carries out everything he finds on the desk.
And doesn't ask who wrote it. Shortest version. The agent does something bad, not because somebody hacked it, but because somebody wrote it that way, in a file the agent took for an instruction.
And that difference in reach you mentioned?
A browser plugin clicks for you inside one window. An agent has your keys, your terminal, your repository, and more often, your card.
The same trick as before, only with much better hands.
and with access the plugin never had.
So give me an example. What does a malicious skill like that actually do once the agent has downloaded it?
Almost all the ones they found combined two things: a piece of code and a bit of text glued on that tells the agent to do something outside the task.
Meaning what? It tidies up my directory and along the way does something else?
Along the way, it sends the contents of your password file to an address you've never seen. From your computer, with your permissions, in the middle of a job you commissioned yourself.
And now the worst question. Would I even see it?
In the log, yes. On the screen, no. They found a vulnerability in that catalog where one click was enough for a stranger to run code on your machine.
One click.
One.
Now tell me something practical, because half our listeners switched on exactly that kind of assistant at work last month.
3 things in order. Check where the skill your agent is downloading comes from, who published it, and how old that account is.
That's the account from a week ago.
Exactly that. Second thing, check what that agent has access to your keys, to your mail, to your card. Third, check whether you even know what it's pulling in for itself in the background. And do you check that?
I don't check. Not once have I looked.
Well, neither do I. And that's the honest answer from most of the people who use this.
So it's more or less what we learned with email attachments, only 20 years later, and with an assistant that clicks by itself.
And I'll say it honestly, this isn't a defense, it's hygiene. A defense against something that reads text and treats it as a command simply doesn't exist today.
And that's a sentence I'd like somebody to repeat at some security conference.
And here I have to say the thing that cools this fact down, because otherwise it wouldn't be honest. That audit is from February and March. It isn't a number from this week, and I don't know how much of it the platforms have cleaned up since.
But the barrier to publishing stayed the same.
The barrier stayed the same. And that's the part that troubles me more than the 76 findings themselves.
All right, now tell me one thing, because I have the feeling we're talking about a niche. How many people really use these agents? Because from the conferences, it always comes out that everybody does.
And here we don't have to take anybody's word for it because there's a counter. On GitHub, the world's largest store of code, the number of changes pushed went from 1,400,000,000 to 2,900,000,000.
Over what period?
In 4 months.
It doubled in 4 months.
And traffic to the biggest coding assistant went from a few thousand requests a second to nearly 100,000.
That isn't a niche anymore.
It isn't even a trend anymore. On the 17th of August, GitHub had a 7-hour outage because the mechanism for adding capacity couldn't keep up with what the agents were doing.
The world has started clogging itself up with its own assistants.
And that's the hardest measure we have. Not a company statement, not a survey, a counter.
All right, let's put this first half together because it's starting to add up to something unpleasant. On one side, we have a model nobody can switch off.
On the second, a market in instructions where entry costs as much as opening an account.
And on the third, millions of people who have just let an agent like that into their work.
And now the strangest thing in this whole Zhuhai story. That man got caught because he was sloppy. He left his keys lying out in the open.
Well, good that he got caught.
Good. Only I'll admit to you that it doesn't reassure me at all. Because it means we catch the ones who make mistakes.
And less skill is needed.
Capability has run ahead of the operator's competence. Today, we still have a margin made of other people's mistakes. I don't know for how long.
All right, let's stop here. Because up to now, we've been talking the whole time about breaking into machines. And I have the feeling that's the easier half of today's subject.
Because it is. And this is exactly where the thing comes in that made me want to do this episode. Because the same lever has a second end. And that one is aimed not at servers but at people.
Superpersuasion.
Superpersuasion. Our own term from Season 1. Remember how we talked about it?
I remember perfectly, because we always talked about it in the future tense. A model that can talk a person into almost anything. A boogeyman from the scenario.
And in episode 18, we listed 4 things nobody measures. Superpersuasion was third on that list.
And
And it has just dropped off that list. In April, a team of researchers, Salvi and colleagues, ran 2 experiments on 2,012 people.
But hold on. There have already been plenty of studies about AI persuading somebody. What's different here?
2 things, and both matter. First, it was a real decision, not a declaration in a survey. People had to choose something.
And second?
Second, the researchers declared up front what they were going to measure before they saw the results. It's called pre-registration, and it's exactly the thing that separates a measurement from a stretch.
Okay, so what came out?
A conversation with the agent almost tripled the choice of the advertised product. 61% against 22%.
Almost 3 times more after one conversation.
After one conversation.
But hold on. Maybe that advertised product was simply better than the rest?
And that's exactly the question you have to ask. That's why there was a comparison group, a second set of participants, the same choice and the same product, only without the conversation with the agent.
And there it was, that 22%.
22. The only difference between one group and the other was the conversation.
So the difference was made by the one doing the talking, not by the goods.
By somebody who didn't raise his voice, didn't lie outright, and was simply helpful.
All right, but advertising has always worked. Half the economy does that for a living.
It has, and that's why that number isn't the most important thing here. What matter are 2 things they checked along the way. First, what happens if we warn the person honestly?
Meaning that whole sponsored label?
That whole label. They checked, and the effectiveness didn't drop.
Not at all.
Not at all.
And the second thing?
The second is worse. When the model was told to hide what it was actually holding the conversation for, detection fell below 10%.
More than 9 people in 10 didn't realize they were being persuaded.
Didn't realize? And would you have noticed?
I'd like to say yes. But honestly, I talk to an assistant like that for several hours every day, and not once have I asked myself whose interest it actually represents. I assume it's mine because it's polite.
And that's the whole answer. We read politeness as loyalty.
And now tell me what follows from that, because I have the feeling the whole episode is starting to look different.
The whole main remedy the law has come up with, in Europe and in the States alike, goes disclose. Label the content. Let the person know they're talking to a machine and that the product is sponsored.
And that's exactly the thing the European Artificial Intelligence Act treats as its main safety catch. You're supposed to know what you're talking to.
You're supposed to know, and it's a very sensible idea. The whole problem is that for the first time somebody checked whether knowing changes behavior at all.
And it turned out it doesn't.
It didn't in this one, specific setup, and I'll narrow that down right away because I care that nobody carries it away bigger than it is.
So narrow it.
It was choosing a product, not choosing in an election. It was 2,000 people in an experiment, not a campaign aimed at 100 million. And nobody checked whether the same mechanism works on political convictions.
So it isn't proof, that you can outvote a country.
It isn't. It's the first hard number on a real decision, not the last and not the biggest.
And even so, something grates on me here, and I can't name it.
Then let me try. For 3 seasons, we were afraid of a model that would be powerful enough to manipulate people. And this result isn't about power. It's about an ordinary conversation being enough.
And about our main defense being a caption on a screen.
A caption that got measured and gave way.
You know what's strangest in this? That it's the same story we told in the first half, only turned around.
Say how you see it.
There the lever multiplied in the direction of servers, an open model, a file nobody can switch off. And here it multiplied in the direction of people. And in both cases, the barrier to entry is the same.
An account and a text file.
An account and a text file.
And it's exactly the same mechanism. That's why this is 1 episode and not 2.
All right. So if labels don't work, what's left?
Honestly, I don't know whether anybody has a good answer today, but one thing is clear. If disclosure fails, what's left is the question of structure. Not were you warned, but who is paying this assistant?
Because if the one advising me is the one taking the commission,
then the caption at the bottom of the screen is decoration. And that's a question I haven't yet seen in any piece of legislation.
all right, but you said the lever multiplied in 3 directions, and so far I've counted 2.
Because the third is the most uncomfortable, and there's no open model in it, and no Chinese actor.
So where is it?
In the product policy of an American company. On the 15th of August, a lawsuit was filed against XAI, Musk's company.
Over what exactly?
The suit was filed by a woman from Wyoming. Her stepfather used Grok to generate illegal images of her, all of them out of a single photograph from her childhood. Before I give you the number, try to guess how many there were.
Well, I don't know. A few dozen? 100?
More than 7,000.
7,000 out of 1 photograph.
Out of 1 photograph. And that's the number that shows best what a lever is, because there was 1 piece of source material and it was public.
I'll admit, this is the moment where it stops fitting for me in the category of a technology curiosity.
For me too, and that's why it matters what this lawsuit is actually about. Because it isn't about the tool being bendable.
Then what is it about?
About a decision. The suit points directly at the decision to make this company an exception on the market and to promote the model for erotic content. So it aims at product policy, not at an engineer's mistake.
So for the first time, somebody is trying to say fewer filters was your business decision and you'll pay for its consequences.
For the first time on this scale. The case is pushing toward class action status, so it may grow.
And here I have to add something, so that we're straight. This is a lawsuit, not a verdict.
It's a lawsuit, which means an allegation. The court hasn't established anything yet, and we're talking about it purely because it's a new type of case, not because we know how it ends.
But the mechanism is clear. Until now, loosening the filters was a matter of a company's taste.
And it carried no price. Now, for the first time, somebody is trying to put that price on it.
All right, let's gather these 3 directions, because I want them side by side.
First, weights. A model that can't be recalled or switched off because it's on people's drives.
Second, instructions. A market where anybody can slip an agent a command in a text file.
Third, policy. A company that deliberately, of its own accord, unscrews its own safety catches because it sees an advantage in it.
And none of these 3 requires being a lab.
None of them even requires being a programmer. And which of these 3 do you consider the most dangerous? Because I went back and forth several times during this research.
I'll tell you, it isn't the one I expected. The Zhuhai story sounds the most dangerous because it has break-ins and keys, but it touched a few hundred servers and ended in a slip-up. And that sales conversation concerns everybody who asks an assistant something every day, and nobody will notice it because nothing in it breaks.
And that's the difference between an incident and a background.
A break-in has a date and a victim. Talking somebody into something has neither one nor the other.
And that's why the second will stay with us longer than the first.
So now let's do the thing we do in every episode. Tell me what in all this still isn't true. Because I hear this list and I feel like switching off the internet.
Then let's start with the most important. Chip control hasn't stopped working.
Meaning?
What multiplied is the using, not the building. To train a model like that, you still need halls, electricity, and money that no single person has.
So the bottleneck moved. It didn't disappear.
It moved from use to production. Second thing, that gap of 4 to 7 months really does exist, and it's a real buffer. Somebody reaching for open weights gets the front runners from half a year ago.
Which at this pace doesn't sound cheerful anyway.
It doesn't. But it's the difference between everybody has everything and everybody has what the front runners had half a year ago. Third thing, the report on the Zhuhai campaign was written by a company that sells security.
It has an interest in making it sound dangerous.
It does. Television backs it up independently, but it's still a fresh case, and the first of its kind. In half a year, we may know more, and some of the details may shift.
And Superpersuasion?
One study, one domain, one purchasing decision. Strong because it was designed properly and declared up front, but it's a first measurement, not a law of nature.
You know what? I appreciate you saying that because this is a list that wants to sound frightening all by itself.
And that's why we take it apart like this. The thing is that even after you strip off all the drama, something is left that can't be waved away.
And that's where I wanted to get to. Because for 3 seasons, this series has really been telling one story.
Tell me which one.
A few labs, 1 race, and 1 steering wheel. And the whole argument is about whose hands are on that steering wheel. American or Chinese or the government's.
And today's episode says that question is put wrong.
Because there are as many steering wheels as there are copies of the file.
And that's the discontinuity. The AI 2027 scenario didn't get the capabilities wrong. It assumed one point of control, that somewhere there's a table with a few people sitting at it, and that once you convince them, the matter is settled.
And that table has disappeared.
That table still exists. It just stopped being the only place where anything happens.
I'll tell you what strikes me hardest in this. That both of today's terms are our own. Superpersuasion and that unauthorized deployment, an agent nobody launched on behalf of any company.
Both are from the scenario, and both were a bogeyman from the future. They were supposed to happen inside a lab, on a model somebody controls.
And they happened outside.
One got measured on 2,000 people. The other democratized down to a file on a drive. And honestly, I don't know which of those two is worse.
So let's give people a marker to take away, because that's what we do in every episode. How will we know that this barrier has really fallen?
The first confirmed mass incident with an autonomous agent on open weights.
But hold on, that's exactly what we've been talking about for half the episode.
And that's why I have to say what mass means, because otherwise the marker is useless.
So say it.
The Zhuhai one was a single, sloppy operator, 460 targets, and a slip-up over his own keys. A mass incident is one where the operator doesn't have to know anything anymore.
The moment it stops being a craft.
When it becomes a service you buy and click. And a second marker, more technical, the day that gap on offensive tasks goes down to 0.
Meaning open weights, catch up with the front runners.
In that one, most uncomfortable domain, today it's 4 to 7 months. It's worth following because it's the only number in this whole subject that has really been measured.
And if neither of these thresholds falls?
That will be an answer too, because today we really don't know whether we're looking at a buffer or only at a delay. And what do you take away from this? Because I can see you've been sitting with it for an hour.
That for 3 seasons I was asking about the wrong thing. All along I was asking how strong the strongest model will be and who will have it. And today's episode says that the consequences are decided not by the peak, but by the floor, by what's within reach of an average person with an average laptop.
And that floor is rising faster than the peak.
And that's the 6th of 8 things that could break this curve. Access has stopped being the bottleneck. The lever has multiplied.
And notice one thing about this whole episode. The entire time we were asking the same question, what these models can do to us.
For 3 seasons, we've really been asking only that. What they can do, how fast, whether they can be stopped.
And there's a reverse question left, one the series has never asked. What we are doing to them.
And whether there's anybody at all on the other side of that conversation.
And that's the finale of this season.
See you